Sejatra and good day to Dr. Aida. My name is Lois Chong. I'm on behalf of my group to introduce the topic that we want to discuss today, which is the effect of movement control or the MCO on low-income family. As you all know, many segments of Malaysia's economy have scaled back or shut down in order to reduce the transmission rate of coronavirus. The government has ordered Malaysians to stay at home and discourage them from going out except to perform any necessary tasks or errands. However, during this period of time, there's a group of people who are in the midst of desperation because of the adverse economic effects of the pandemic. Who is this group of people? The low-income group, which is also known as the poor people, those with the lowest paying jobs and the fewest financial resources. Without any further ado, let us just go through the first effect of MCO on this low-income family, which is the financial pressure. The enforcement of MCO has cut the poor people off from their main source of income. Why would this happen? There are some problems of the poor parents in the family that we often overlook. Firstly, working from home is not an option for some of the poor workers because maybe some of them do not have necessary electronic devices. They do not even have enough capital for the installation of Wi-Fi. This means that they are unable to work for their boss and it ends up with no income to the family. Next, contrary to white-collar workers, there are some workers such as lorry drivers, restaurant workers, and grocery store clerks who are required to present physically and interact with the others. However, in view of the nature of their work, they must stop working in order to reduce the transmission rate of coronavirus. In this case, they are protected from getting coronavirus, yet the situation leads them into financial problems. As what the Chinese like to say, if hands stop, mouth stops too. And there are some people from this low-income group are self-employed or earn income through their small businesses. Yet, the outbreak has now led to these businesses having to either scale back or close shop, cutting these poor people off from one of their main sources of income. Next, lacking of financial security also causes them suffer from financial pressure too. Most of them are not covered by the social protection measures introduced by the government, such as allowing 500 ringgit monthly EPF withdrawals because they work in informal employment. For instance, petty traders, tailors, and freelancers. There are also family heads work in companies that do not provide social protections or the absence of EPF contributions. Therefore, we know that they cannot enjoy the financial security just like what the former workers enjoy. And they are probably already struggling to pay rental fees, taxes, and other sorts of expenses before MCO. Their remaining income after accounting for daily consumption and the inflation is left no more. Yet, things go worse because maybe some of them do not have enough savings to withstand emergency events just like what had happened throughout this year. The outbreak of the pandemic has caused long-term aftermath to these poor people and brings great onslaught to them. Now that's all for my part of going through this financial pressure, and now let me pass my time to my friends to introduce the other effects of MCO on low-income family. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum and hi, my name is Nur Afika Dira binti Hazli Zafri. Today I would like to talk about the effect of movement control order MCO on low-income family in aspect of their children's education. So, how MCO affect children's education? First, the children cannot study well at home. I as a student agree with this statement because the learning environment at home is a little bit different from being at university. For children from low-income family, they are more affected. They do not having enough facilities to cope with online learning. As we all know, we need facilities such as laptop, good internet connection, and at least we need to have a smartphone, right? But for these children, they have difficulty to have them. Most of them unable to own a smartphone, even when they are already in university level. So they must instead rely on the mobile phones of the adult family members. The children, especially at primary level, are still unfamiliar with digital technologies and online platforms for online learning. For example, some could not set up Google Classroom or troubleshoot technical issues independently, requiring assistance and guidance from adults, usually parents and teachers. It became worse when their parents also unfamiliar with these digital technologies. It was a worsening of education outcomes due to challenges in accessing home-based online learning. So this reality proved that the children cannot study well at home during this pandemic as they are still grappling with e-learning. Hungry children do not learn properly because hunger strikes hard on students. Previously, their parents were able to provide enough pocket money to spend on food at school or university. Because of this pandemic, their parents had to quit their jobs. So, this situation was forced the parents to cut back spending on their children's education. Children living in this situation are at risk of deteriorating dietary quality because of changes in their food consumption and a worsening of education outcomes due to challenges in accessing home-based online learning. MCO affected hard on special children's education from low-income family. These children category require special support and educational approaches and they are often overlooked. University Putra Malaysia Faculty of Educational Studies Dean Prof. Dr. Samsilah Roslan said online learning proved to be challenging for children with physical, visual, and hearing disabilities. The lack of assistive devices at home to accommodate their special learning needs might affect their abilities to continuously benefit from a supportive learning environment. There was no access to special educational interventions or therapies when the facilities were temporarily closed. The trained professionals were not able to reach them due to movement restriction. Their communication skills have also been affected in recent months as they have not been exposed to peers and teachers at school. As we all know, their way of communicating is different from ours. They will have forgotten most of their training from school and lost touch with routine. Children with autism, for example, have great difficulty adapting to a change of pattern, causing them to throw a tantrum. In other cases, their parents are not yet proficient in using sign language, so they cannot help their children in study. Furthermore, the lack of facilities at home for online classes has disrupted this child's learning. MCOs have limited their social spectrum to only their family members, hence the lack of social exposure make them communication skills affected. They are also at risk of dropping out of school as a result of the combined financial of their family and psychological impacts of the crisis. When these special children became stressed and depressed, they will think they have no hope of learning well. This resulted in poor grades for their exam. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, now let's discuss the effect of MCO to low-income family in terms of health. Health can be divided into two, which are mental health and physical health. Mental health. As we all know that majority of parents in low-income families are those laborers that need to attend physically or work physically for wages. So work from home is definitely not a choice or even solution for them. This meaning that they have lost their income. They need to survive this pandemic using their little savings. So as time goes by, this financial burden will suffocate those low-income parents. They will become unhappy, emotionally unstable, or worse, depressed because they struggle to make livings for their children.
Now let's consider those children from low-income family who travel far to another well-developed state or country such as Kuala Lumpur or Singapore for the sake of reducing the financial burden of family. During this MCO, they are not able to cross state or cross country to meet their loved ones. So this will upset those children. So we will say that MCO affect the mental health of children in low-income family. Why low-income families only? Because those children from low-income families are more eager to go after high-paid jobs than another. How about those children from low-income families that just graduated from school or college? They are in hurry looking for a job to help the financial weakness of family, but this MCO makes them harder to look for one because lots of companies cut down on company size, right? They are worried about the family situation, but at the same time, they are helpless. This results in unhealthy mental because they feel anxiety and helpless. Okay, physical health. During MCO, with little savings in hand, parents have to cut down expenses. A study that we found shows that over 1/3 living in KLPPR struggle to buy sufficient food for their families during MCO. Besides that, restriction of outdoor activities during MCO, such as walk after a meal or jogging, also affect the physical health of low-income families. Why do I say so? This is because it is hard for the members to work out in a packed unit. Next, during MCO, visit to hospital for regular medication is not allowed because more government hospitals are becoming COVID-19 hospitals. Roadblocks also making it harder for the patients to seek for immediate medical advices. The only solution is to visit a private hospital, but this is definitely a big no for low-income families because of the expensive medical fees. Okay, now let's talk about both mental and physical health. During MCO, parents in low-income families lost their income and they experience a higher financial pressure than others. This feeling of frustration can easily result into abusive actions towards their aged parents, parental abusive, wife or husband, domestic violence, and not to forget the innocent children, child abuse. An article that we found shows that during MCO, Malaysia recorded a rise in parental abusive case and a drop of domestic violence case was recorded by WAO, Women's AIDS Organizations in Malaysia. This drop of case is not a good sign because it signals what they fear most. Victims are not able to report because the abuser is at home monitoring the victims all day. This is worse in small unit of low-income families because the abuser can easily monitor the victims and the victims have no space to escape. Any of these abusive will leave a big scar mentally and physically. We can say that MCO has greatly increased the probability of abusive cases in low-income families.
Hello, my name is Young Ken, and today I will be talking about the effect of MCO to low-income family, which is accessibility to daily needs. The Movement Control Order, which is called MCO, has led to major segment of Malaysian economy shutting down or scaling back in a nationwide effect to slow transmission of the novel coronavirus. However, one segment of the population that is perhaps more susceptible to the adverse economic effect of the pandemic is the urban poor. For low-income families, there is limited access to affordable food and goods as well as a risky reliance on public transportation. The MCO enforcement has strictly prohibited the operation of informal markets such as night market, pasar malam, and farmer market, pasar tani, to minimize the risk of the COVID-19 transmission. It is important to note that these markets are both of a source of the income and affordable products for many low-income families. They are highly dependent on this informal market to access cheap foods and goods, such as fresh product, household goods, and clothes, despite living near largest retail store. A study has shown that households in the PPR visits this market at least once a week, with some households even doing their retreat, such as for their essentials. Hence, we expect that the closures of this market will lead to the market trader losing their income and household losing access to affordable provision. The household auctions are now limited to the Gedaranchi operating in their complex, which may not be able to keep up with the sudden increase in demands on nearby supermarket, which product may cost beyond their normal budgets. For the second point is that the risky reliance on the public transportation or taxis. Households that usually rely on public transportation will now find their mobility further restricted due to the suspension of certain free bus service, such as Max Lango and PJ City Bus, and other forms of the public transportation, such as LRT, MRT, monorails, and the rapid KL bus, to reducing their frequency and limiting their operation hour to only peak periods to assist workers in the essential sector. This might limit the mobility of the PPR households, especially those without personal transport to perform essential tasks attending regular hospital appointments. Our study has revealed that the PPR resident frequently use public transport. It means that a combination of bus, trains, and taxi on the average nearly three times a week. Given their current financial constraints, taking a taxi or e-hailing service will be an extra burden of those households without personal vehicle. So here is our group sharing. Thank you.